Hello everyone! Today I'm going to be doing another Copic illustration, this time of a character called Aerith from Final Fantasy VII. At the beginning there you saw me using a light box, so actually what I did was I did the original sketch on just a random piece of cardstock, and because I was planning to do no line work, I wanted the lines to be a little bit lighter and less harsh, so I just used my light box to transfer the image onto a piece of better quality paper and then just use lighter strokes so that the pencil wouldn't show through as much once I use the Copic markers. So as you can see, I've already gone in and started doing the actual coloring of the image, starting with the jacket and the skin. And so because I didn't have line art to use to help me, besides just some light pencil sketches, I really had to focus on using different values of the markers to show lights and shadows, to really show where the folds and wrinkles of the clothing were, because again, I couldn't just draw those in with an ink pen. And so I think that was a really good exercise in just practicing knowing where your light source is and adding more definition to your drawing. So as for the subject of the image herself, like I said, Aerith is from a game called Final Fantasy VII. The original was released back in 1997, which is actually before I was born. So I'm not one of those fans that played it back then and has been waiting over 20 years for the remake, which is coming out tomorrow actually, but I did play the remastered version on the PS4 a few years back, so I do know the story and I am familiar with the characters, but here I decided to draw the version of her from the remake coming out because I didn't really want to draw 8-bit Aerith from 23 years ago. A lot of my friends thought I was crazy for playing that game because the graphics are so just not on par with the games that I normally play, but I am a pretty big fan of Final Fantasy, and so of course I had to play Final Fantasy VII. And I know some people were and still are pretty skeptical about the remake coming out tomorrow, but I honestly think that it's going to be really good, and I am really looking forward to it. And so here I'm just going in and coloring the hair, and I'm using a technique called the feathering technique. So one thing about markers is that if you want to get a really nice blend, similar to kind of the type of blend I did for the jacket, you have to work pretty quickly. So with Copic markers, you can really mix any two color markers together. The colors aren't what matter, it's the solvent. So pretty much how wet it is. So if you wait for the marker to dry before going in and adding your new color, it's not going to blend as seamlessly. But with the feathering technique, it's kind of more about layering, and so I didn't really rush. I didn't really feel that sense of urgency coloring the hair because I was just layering, and so I could take my time, really think about where the lights and the shadows would be. So that was nice. And so now I'm just going in and coloring some of the details, such as the belts on her outfit, her bracelets. And then for this, the flower she's holding is actually a lily, and so I had to look up a reference image for that to kind of see what the colors looked like and where they would go. And for all the flowers in the image, I used my colorless blender, and I used what's called the nib to nib technique. And so basically what you do there is you take, you don't have to use a colorless blender, you can do it with any marker, but I did it with that just because I wanted to get a really light color. But you take your colorless blender and you kind of transfer some of the pigment from the color that you want onto it. And so then when you use the blender on the paper, it's a much lighter color. And so that's good for stuff like, especially flowers and things like that, where you need something really light. It's not good at all for large areas, especially with the colors blender, because you won't really get an even color, but for the flowers it worked really well. And so here I'm just going in and sketching in her hand, which I never did originally in the initial sketch because I wasn't sure if it was going to show up in the image or not. So I'm just going ahead and doing that, coloring in some of the skin in the background that I didn't do before, the final details, and then I start the part of the drawing that I was dreading, which was coloring in the basket, and it was definitely the hardest part. The little swirly parts on the rim and the handle were fine, but I really wasn't sure how to go in and color the bottom part of the basket. So I decided just to add in the basic shading, and then I was going to go in later with colored pencil and add the details afterwards. So that's what I decided on. So one thing I found out recently as I was looking up reference images to do my sketch for Aerith is that apparently a lot of people dislike her, which makes me really sad because I like her a lot. I like her and Tifa, the other lead main female character, pretty much equally. And so I'm really hoping that this remake fleshes out her character more and changes people's opinions, because apparently they're going to be getting equal screen time. But yeah, I really like Aerith's character, and I especially like her character design, which is why I chose to draw her first over Cloud or Tifa or any of the other characters, because she's just more kind of my style and like what I like to draw, which is flowers and reds and pinks and cute stuff. But pretty soon, I'm sure the remake tomorrow is going to inspire me to do more Final Fantasy VII stuff, and so I'm sure I'm going to draw the other characters as well. So here I'm just going in with some colored pencils and pan pastels, which are pretty much just normal pastels except in pan form, to add more details into the drawing. And here is the finished piece. If you liked this video and want to see more of my content, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel, because there's more content coming out very soon.